The April 21st meeting of the Granville Exempted Village School District Board of Education meeting. It's a lovely evening, so I'm glad you were able to join us. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Corman?
Here.
Ms. Deeds?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
And Mr. Janice and Dr. Reynolds are on their way. So,
Commendation.
excellent. I'm going to skip the cheerleaders until I see maybe some faces arrive. And then, so we'll start by honoring our couple of volunteers that we have in the school district. In honor of National Volunteer Week, we have invited 4 women to be recognized tonight for their dedication and service to our schools, staff, and community. All of these honorees have given countless hours of their free time to help raise funds, support teachers, and volunteer in school-related functions. They are truly deserving of our gratitude and are true partners in helping the district carry out its mission to provide a superior educational experience for our students. Tonight, we'd like to honor PTO Board President Julie Guglielmi and co-chair of ACES and next year's co-vice president of the PTO, Emma Butler. The other 2 that we would like to recognize are the middle school parents president, Sandy Libertini, and middle school vice president and co-chair of ACES, Leanne Miller, but they couldn't be here tonight. So Emma and Julie, please come on up and be recognized. Now you'll be on the website and everything.
Sorry.
Usually takes a couple for me. You good? One more? I told you this. It's all me. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So just to elaborate on these 2 individuals, first of all, Julie raised $90,000 from the Phantom of the Aces auction for PTO this year, which was a phenomenal success, which will go to fund a lot of great things that will happen at GIS and GES, and I know it probably dominated your life for many months, so I want to thank you personally for all your dedication. And Emma was, as I said, co-chair of ACES, which was our levy committee, and I can tell you Chris didn't see her for a long time this fall because she dedicated a lot of time and effort to that cause, which ended up raising $2.3 million for operation of the school district. So both of these ladies deserve a huge round of applause. So thank you.
Again.
All right. Tonight we are also recognizing an outstanding educator who inspires children and staff through leadership and caring. 3rd grade teacher Lori Fender is this year's recipient of the Leadership for Learning Award given by the Licking County Foundation. The award is given to 1 teacher in our district each year. Teachers are nominated by the building principal and approved by me. Teachers must meet the following criteria to be considered for nomination. Have a mission to make a significant difference in the lives and learning of their students. They have to be committed to participating in lifelong professional development. They must demonstrate outstanding skills and leadership in the classroom. And they must join with other Licking County teachers to enhance the quality of the education in the community. Lori was nominated by Principal Todd Rogers because of her dedication to students and her professionalism. In his nomination letter, Mr. Rogers stated her ability to change the lives of those assigned to her class each year is especially moving. I can attest to that because I had a daughter in her classroom last year. And I will tell you that you made a difference in Lily's life for sure. And I know that Lily is just like all of your other kids. So thank you for everything that you do, and I'd like to honor you with a little token of our appreciation. Pictures taken as well. All right, we good? All right. I will tell you that Lori probably doesn't like the attention. And we surprised her. It's one of the great awards that we give out because we just walk into a classroom at a random time and say, guess what? You're getting an award. And her face, I mean, she was stunned when 4 people walked in from the Licking County Foundation to honor her and all the work that she does. But she is very deserving of that award. So thank you. And then finally, we are going to recognize the competition cheerleading team and their coaches here. But 2 Granville High School seniors who are members of the competition cheerleading team under the direction of their coach, Stephanie Longo, and assistant coach, Misty Postal. The competition cheerleading team achieved many high points this season, including qualifying for the National High School Cheer Competition or Championships held in Orlando, Florida, where the team placed among the top 10 in the country. They received the first place finish in their division and top scorer of the day at the Ohio Cheer Challenge, and placed 3rd at the Ohio State competition. Last month, the team competed in the OASSA state competition held at Bowling Green State University, where they placed 3rd among 18 other Division II teams. This was the highest place finish in our school's history, due in large part to the leadership and teamwork of the 2 girls we honor tonight and their coach. So Rachel Anderson, Marissa Crudell, and Stephanie Longo. Stephanie, come on. Give that to the girls. And you have to turn around and take a picture. Great, thank you.
Oh, one more? One more.
Oh, one up. Do that every time.
That's a good one.
And we had one more, but we are delaying that to next month because of an issue with the auditors. So, thank you very much. And if you would like to stay, you're more than welcome, but we understand it's a beautiful night, and the jackets are on tonight. So, you know, if you need to get home to watch the game, we understand that as well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See? You responded. Yeah.
I don't think it's.
So I was there.
It's 6:43.
Oh, we are? See it. You were surprised.
I go in,
It's good.
Okay.
and just to be clear, an issue with the auditor's office just means they couldn't be here.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah,
I thought maybe within the commendation section, yes. It was an award. So-
We're sticking to the word, though.
say, I think it was too much of a troublemaker and they changed their minds.
All right.
All right. Staff report?
Okay, I'd like to invite Kathy Heidelberg up to discuss the policy changes that you will see later in the action agenda. As you know, the board does a typical round of policy updates twice a year, usually in the fall and then again in the spring. This is our spring update. And as you can see by the lengthy list, there was a lot of changes. So, but Ms. Heidelberg will explain.
So as far as the policy changes go, hopefully you've had a chance to look at the policies. They were posted in the board section of SharePoint. There's quite a few of them, and I know there was a lot to read. I believe Jeff also sent in the BIF a summary of the update. So what I'm gonna do is just try to hit the highlights, the big ideas. There weren't huge significant changes, but many of them are changes just to make us compliant with current state law and federal guidelines. So I'll do a really quick review of the basic ideas and the main ideas that are in the policy updates. And if you would hold questions to the end, then we can hopefully address them at that point. The first group of policies are related to transportation. So if you look at EEA, EEAA, and EEAC, which are listed later in the agenda, those are all related to student transportation. EEA is allowing the district to use other forms of transportation in addition to school buses. It's also allowing the district to approve on an annual basis the bus stops and time schedules that are necessary to accommodate the students' needs. This is allowing us to have procedures for safe and efficient school transportation services, and acknowledging that the superintendent or the superintendent's designee is responsible for that. It also addresses the issue of transporting students to other programs, community schools, private schools, STEM schools, and also the issue of payment in lieu of transportation for students who don't use those transportation services but accept payment instead of that. In EEAA, walkers and riders, this is just giving the district more flexibility in establishing the zones where students are eligible for student transportation. So it's just giving us a little more flexibility in what we do in regard to who gets transported. EEAC is about the school bus safety program. It's a required policy, and it has to do with basic components of school transportation safety requirements. The next two policies, EEACD and EEACD-R, which are the regulations for the policy, are about drug testing, and they're about drug testing for district personnel who are required to hold a commercial CDL license. So that's the policy and the regulations that go with it. It has to do with mandatory procedures for drug and alcohol testing of individuals that are required to hold CDL, commercial driver's license, policy or regulations, or the license itself. This is bringing us into compliance with federal and state guidelines, and it also is where we indicate that we will require an employee to have a drug test if for any reason they had an accident, and we suspected that they were under the influence of alcohol or drugs. We did not choose to use permissive language that dealt with return to duty after such testing. We chose not to do that in those two policies. The next group of policies, GBS and GBSE, which is an exhibit, has to do with the Health Insurance Portability Act and bringing our policies into compliance with recent requirements in HIPAA. It also assures that we're in compliance with FERPA, the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. As part of this compliance, we're dealing with privacy rights of individuals, and the notion that we are not allowed to release certain health information about individuals in their employment. In the policies, it also talks about what happens if there's a breach of this confidentiality and what rights the employee has, and what steps the employee can take if there's a breach in this confidentiality. So those are two policies that have to do with privacy rights. The exhibit that was deleted is replaced with a new exhibit that is just a more simple, easy to understand notification that employees are to get. It's a model notification about individual rights related to these policies. There's also another policy, GBN, and it's listed a little bit later in the list, about extended group health insurance coverage. This policy has to do with COBRA, when employee benefits are no longer allowed to be given, and the employee has an opportunity to move into COBRA coverage. The policy has to do with notification of that eligibility for COBRA coverage, and this policy is bringing us our language into alignment with the Affordable Care Act. So in the Affordable Care Act, we're to notify employees that they may elect COBRA coverage, but they have the ability to go into the health insurance marketplace to seek alternatives, and also notifies employees that they are not subject to any pre-existing conditions in terms of further coverage. So this is just aligning us with the Affordable Care Act and extending the group health insurance coverage to people who are eligible for COBRA coverage. Another group of policies has to do with extracurricular activities, and the one we are updating today is GECBA, and that's the admission of exchange students into our school district, and also stating in that policy that that students that are exchange students are eligible for extracurricular activities and athletic programs. There were some additional policies that we could have chosen to update, but they had to do with admission of inter-district transfer students, and we don't do that at this time, so we did not choose to change anything in our current wording for those policies. So what we did update is GECBA, admission of exchange students, and that speaks to, as I said before, just their ability to participate in extracurricular activities. Another group of policies are having to do with finance, and those would be DI, DN, and DLC-R. So DI is about fiscal accounting and reporting, and this policy is updating our current policy, bringing it into compliance with the House Bill 59. What it does is extends the reporting requirement to other types of schools besides just public schools, charter schools, STEM schools, other types of schools, so that we're all using the same format in our financial reporting at the end of the year, and that format will allow the public to compare our financial situations with other types of schools. So it's indicating how we will align our reporting requirements with what ODE is asking us to do now, so that people can very readily compare finances. That is policy DI. Policy DN has to do with sale of property, and in policy DN, the basic idea is that if a district sells property, we have to be sure that we first settle any outstanding debts that were incurred in relation to the disposed property before we access the profits of that sale. In policy DLC-R, actually that's not a policy, it's a regulation. That is one that we chose to update right now, and the changes are actually just stating in the regulation what we actually do. This has to do with individuals who are seeking reimbursement for expenses that they incurred when they had a conference or went to a conference. And all we're saying in that policy is what we already do. It hadn't been explicitly stated, and we thought it would be valuable to actually assure in the language it stated that when an individual sought reimbursement for a conference expense, that we were following the General Services Administration current CONUS guidelines, which we are doing, and it also indicates that we won't reimburse for alcoholic beverages, and that there would also be no reimbursement for meals that were already provided by the conference. So if an individual goes to a conference and meals are included in registration, that individual could not submit a request for reimbursement for meals that were paid for in addition to what the conference provided. The next policy has to do with physical education. It's IGAF. And this is a very generic policy. It just indicates that we're offering a program of physical education that encourages activity for all students. It's updating our language and it provides districts that are participating in a special pilot program that ODE was sponsoring a couple of years ago. If you are participating in that pilot program, it allows you to have additional flexibility in how you account for daily physical activity for students. I do not believe Granville is participating in that pilot program, so we don't need to concern ourselves with that. As a result, the broad language that's in this policy is definitely aligns with what we're already doing. So there's not really a major change for our district. There are several policies which have to do with school year and school day, and they're a little bit further down the list. They're IC, ICA, which is school year and calendar year, and then ID, which is school day. And those policies are just bringing us into compliance with House Bill 59. Changes have been made to calamity days and also in the calculation of a minimum school year from days to hours. These changes will go into effect July 1, 2014. And what we're basically doing is changing wording so that the definition of a minimum school year is in compliance with this House Bill 59, so that what we're looking at is the number of hours instead of the number of days in our school year. So it's known as the days to hours change. It will be effective July 1 unless there's any additional changes in the legislation before that time. But it does require that a board hold a public hearing at least 30 days prior to adopting the school calendar. And at this hearing, the board is required to discuss the total number of hours in a school year, the length of a school day, and the beginning and ending times of instruction in the district. You are allowed to make changes in your total number of hours, but if you reduce the number of hours from the previous year, you would have to adopt that as a formal resolution, and you would have to indicate that you're reducing your hours. We're also encouraged in this policy, and it indicates in the policy that you work with outside entities to coordinate calendars, so that if we're sending students to joint vocational schools, or if there are students that are using our transportation system for community schools or for private schools, that will make an attempt to consult with these schools and align our calendars. It does not say you have to, but it indicates that you'll make an attempt to coordinate the calendars. So IC and ICA does that adjustment of language from school days to school hours, and ID talks about a school day, that it's no longer required that we have a specific number of hours in a school day dictated by ODE. We can decide what that is as long as we have a total number of hours over the course of the year that makes us in compliance with this. And as a result of those things, we're also going to be changing policy that has to do with emergency closings, because there will be no such thing as calamity days any longer. There will, since we're only having to comply with the total number of hours, we won't deal with language about calamity days, and we won't have to report calamity days, and we won't have to have a contingency plan other than assuring that we meet the minimum number of hours over the course of the year. So as a result of that, policy EBCD about emergency closings is changing the language, and the regulation EBCD-R about emergency closings is also being adjusted to reflect that change. There is some permissive language in both of those policies, that the district has chosen to use, and it is about using blizzard bags or online instruction to take the place of up to 3 days, whatever we define as days, to make up those missing days. So that language is in these policies. Another group of policy has to do with safety, and if you look down your list at policies EB, EBAA, EBBC, EBC-R, and ECG. Those are all policies that have to do with safety programs, and they're all adjusted to keep up with OSHA changes. So the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, recently made changes to their hazard communication standard, aligning the United States with globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals. These changes are being phased in over 3 years through 2016 to help manufacturers, distributors, and employers comply. Since we're a public employer, we do not have to directly comply with these OSHA guidelines, but instead we have specific guidelines for public employment risk reduction and risk reduction programs. All of these policies are being adjusted by tweaking words to be sure that we're naming the right program and that we're using the right terminology. There's a single set of standardized criteria for classifying chemicals according to their health and physical hazards, and that terminology change previously was called Material Safety Data Sheets, MSDS. In the future, those documents are called Safety Data Sheets, SDS, so we have to change those initials in all the policies. And so there's a number of policies that are changing, but really all they're about is just this language, this vocabulary, the titles of the programs. Nothing of any substance is being changed in any of those policies. The next group of policies is about tobacco use, and those are policies, there's a number of them. One of them has to do with students, one of them has to do with staff, and one of them has to do with our grounds, our site, or our facilities. Those numbers are, for staff, it's GBK, no tobacco use on district property by staff members. For students, it's JFCG, tobacco use by students. And for the grounds or for the facilities, it's KGC, and that has to do with no tobacco use on district property. In all 3 cases, we've chosen a version of recommended policies that has to do with having 100% compliance with a no smoking policy. There were 2 different versions. There was a version 1 where you could have designated smoking areas, and there was versions 2 where you had 100% compliance with the no smoking policy. We went with version 2 in every case, which was what the district had done in the past. The biggest change in all of those policies has to do with e-cigarettes and adding language that dealt with e-cigarettes. Electronic cigarettes are now mentioned in all of those policies because there's a growing popularity of electronic cigarettes that is out there, and it's left many people questioning about how our districts can regulate smoke-free environments if we allow use of e-cigarettes. So after looking over federal guidelines, state reports, it has been determined that there is potential for the use of e-cigarettes to lead to health hazards for individuals. And so based on this, Ohio School Boards Association did prescribe some permissive language that you could include in your policies, indicating that the tobacco-free definition also applies to e-cigarettes. We did choose to do that, so in all of those policies, there's like a one statement, one sentence that's been added that indicates that e-cigarettes are considered a form of use of tobacco, and so they're prohibited for students, for staff, for students, and then lastly, for public use. In the public policy, KGC, there's an opportunity to put language in that indicates if someone was not in compliance with your tobacco policy, that you could approach them and ask them to please, refrain from using those products. And if you chose to, you could actually ask them to leave the premises. But it's written in a way that you may do those things. It does not say you must do those things. So we chose the language that would give us the opportunity if we thought we needed to do it, and that we could do that. And the very last policy that is listed has to do with pregnant students and providing options for pregnant students, and that is JFE. That's a required policy, and basically what it does is indicate that we have a legal responsibility under Title IX to not discriminate against students on the basis of sex in educational programs and activities, and that includes pregnancy. And it basically states that we have a responsibility to support students who are pregnant and to assure that they continue to have education provided to them. It also indicates that we would be assuring that those students were protected against harassment, bullying, that type of thing, that we would make reasonable accommodations for pregnant students to allow them to participate in all of our programs, that we would not require them to bring permission from their doctors to participate in programs, and that we would treat them just as we do other students and allow them to take advantage of all the programs and opportunities we have here for students. It also advises in that policy about appropriate behavior of educators in order to use, in our use of support programs and counseling services, etc. So that is a required policy, and it is something that we're, I believe, adding at this time. I don't know if we had a policy like that in the past. So I think that's all of them. There's quite a few, and like I said at the beginning, most of it is just to align us with current law, to change terminology, and to assure that everything is, I did, the one policy that we added that OSBA had not suggested, or that we modified that OSBA did not suggest necessarily, but we wanted to change it was, and I looked at Mike, and that's why I thought of it as DLC Regulation R, but we talked about that. So everything else was recommended by OSBA.
Any questions?
A couple of quick little things or comments. First of all, smoke-free schools it says a lot about our community and our culture as a country. When I was growing up, that's a great progress. So thanks for making sure that's implemented right in policy. A second quick question on there was something about extracurricular activities in homeschooled kids. And that we have to validate eligibility of grades and so forth. Is that kind of vetted through the system, and do we have a way to do that anyway? It looked like that was a change to some extent.
Okay. We actually started implementing that last year when we allowed homeschool students resident homeschool students, because there's a delineation now.
Yeah.
We have a process where the parents do report their grades to our athletic office, just like our athletic office checks up on eligibility within the school district. Okay. And parents have been complying with that if their students are participating. And Kathy alluded to it, but there was permissive language to allow non-resident students, and we have chosen not to embrace that because we don't involve open enrollment in any other aspect of the organization.
Okay, great.
I think our policy in that particular policy does indicate that we don't. The only thing we say is that we do not currently admit non-resident students.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have to deal with any of the other language because we don't admit them. So we did not change that. That's what we've had.
Okay. I also think it's kind of interesting that there's a requirement to change financial reporting to show more comparison to other types of schools and things like that, right? That's interesting, and I'm not sure if that's also going to translate to the academic side, where there's, academic correlation or comparison and things like that, but it's a step, an interesting step in that direction. I'm not sure what's motivating or kind of where it's heading.
I think if you look at where the local report card is heading, there are academic aspects that are comparable to rankings, those kinds of things, but there's also going to be a fiscal component in the near future.
Right. Involving non-public schools as well? Because this sounds like
well,
this is beyond just public schools.
I think it may be leading that direction in the near future.
The goal is to have effective and efficient schools. So we're currently, the local report card is all about effectiveness in terms of student achievement. And in the future, it's going to, as Jeff said, move into also efficient. How do you do this in an efficient manner, and how do schools compare in that regard? Cost effective.
Which is kind of what we already do with our third benchmark, resources and operations. Any other questions?
Hey, quick question, calamity days,
Yes.
which is a big issue with my constituents, or at least the 3 school-age children in my house. I know we're going to an hourly threshold, and we're already well above that hourly threshold. As a practical matter, what do you anticipate being different, if anything, about how that'll be administered?
I think what will be unique is that we will probably embrace the calamity day or the blizzard bags or the online education process much earlier than after 5 days. Whether that's immediate or, maybe after 2 days or 3 days that gets initiated, that will probably be the most apparent change to our students or your constituents.
Report back.
Yes,
Very well done, thanks.
Yeah, good job, Kathy, thank you.
thank you. Just a reminder that this is we're going to approve this en masse in the action agenda, and it will not require a second reading because it is mostly state statute and policy updates. The second aspect of the report is going to be very brief as well, and it's related to our handbooks, which you've received the link related to the handbooks. Most of the updates are related to the annual updating of the documents, and we did add some language at the intermediate school that dealt with the use of technology within the school building, because we do allow the use, so we wanted to have policy language in those handbooks that parents sign off on. And you will see that action item in about 5 seconds after your board reports.
Perfect.
Yep, any questions about handbooks?
Okay.
At this time, we would entertain public comments. If you'd like to address the board with any issues, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and you can speak for up to 3 to 5 minutes. Would anybody like to address the board at this time? Seeing there is nobody, we will move on. Board reports. I'm going to skip me for a second and start with other people. Katie, any updates from the New Granville Authority?
I was hoping I wouldn't go first. It's May 12th, right?
May 12th.
Yes. I want to make sure I have the date. We will be holding elections on May the 12th for new members of the New York Granville Community Authority. And the polling is open until
6:30.
6:30.
Yeah, in here, yeah, it's
In
the,
this room.
it's the warm-up for the board meeting that night,
Yes.
is the voting for the authority
So
representatives.
residents in Park Trails and in, where does the other contiguous,
River,
it's Park Ridge.
Park Ridge,
Yeah,
And there's a little bit down
yeah.
River Road. So members of those communities will be hopefully showing up to vote.
well, on the bright side, there are three positions that are open this year, and we have 3 people who have nominated, put their hats in the ring to run, so
Very good.
that's a good thing.
Great.
Thomas?
GF continues to be active with a bunch of great members and things like that. A couple of updates. One is that somewhat of a detail, but they're changing their type of 501c3 organization from a supporting organization, which requires a different level of oversight from the board and the district specifically, to a more general type, which is typical for most public charities, which will give them a little bit more latitude in terms of the way that they support the district. Their mission is not changing at all, but I think it's a kind of healthy step in the right direction to clean up the IRS status, because although it's a detail, sometimes those details are important to the IRS. And certainly that it is moving in the right direction that allows them to kind of continue to collaborate even closer with a lot of our other support organizations or other groups in the community. So that's one change. The fundraising campaign went very well, and the grant process, they've received 4 grant applications from staff. A couple of notes about those: they haven't voted on them officially or approved any of them. One of them was significantly motivated by a student, right, which was really positive to see a student get involved in the grant writing process. That was for a solar panels at the high school. Another one had parent contribution, right, as a way to create the grant. So I thought that was really healthy that we had those diverse perspectives bringing in ideas to the district for funding. Although they haven't decided on them, with only 4 of them, even the total of those funds is not as much as we've received from the community. So I think there's an opportunity for lots more grants, and we would have loved to see a lot more staff members or other parts of the district find ways to ask for some, because I think the community is going to be very supportive financially of great ideas. So I think there's a couple of things to clean up on those grants specifically. Also, as they did last year, the GEF reached out to other support organizations to find ways to partner with them, and both the PTO and Aspire have been interested in finding ways to collaborate on these grants. So I think that's another great way that we're, showing collaboration across, support organizations that's going to continue to build. So that's all great news from the GEF. And lastly, they're going to do again this year something called Thanks for the Memories, which is a fundraising campaign, but more importantly, a recognition campaign for Teacher Appreciation Week, where people, if they choose to this year, instead of buying a small gift for the teachers or offering some other something else for them, they can use the Granville Education Foundation as a mechanism to contribute to the general fund in a way that the teachers themselves will be recognized specifically and given some recognition to show off in the room or something along those lines. So it's a great way, instead of having to go out and figure out, do I need to buy an apple, or do I need to buy a little trinket for the teacher or a coffee mug or something like that, to make a significant difference by contributing, financially to the Granville Education Foundation to whatever extent, individuals feel comfortable. So I think that's a nice way that they're going to start that campaign here shortly and send out information to the elementary grades through flyers and the higher grades through electronic means and so forth. But I think that was a neat mechanism that they're trying to use to grade in funds and also recognize our excellent staff.
Great.
So I think that's the updates from GEF. Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any questions? Amy, have any updates from the?
I don't.
Okay. You guys have anything from that?
Sure. So the levy effort, which I should remind folks is the renewal of the permanent improvement levy without altering any of the current taxes, is well underway with the arrival of warm spring weather. You may have seen some yard signs sprouting up around town, and I think we'll see a lot more of them. There are folks who have been requesting them, and there's a great group of volunteers led by Jay Snyder who have been organizing and putting out information and distributing signs and being responsive. I know they're having discussions with the Chamber of Commerce about putting some information in the Chamber's newsletter. There's also a senior luncheon which is coming up to provide some information, and that's receiving some publicity. They're in the process of distributing flyers to local organizations and businesses who would make them available to their customers. They are also in the process of assembling a list of community members and leaders. Sorry, it's all right, sorry. Community members and leaders who would be willing to write endorsement letters, submit endorsement letters in the newspaper. And so it's really, you know, the full-fledged education campaign, education information campaign underway right now. Trying to get the word out that, again, I know we're all very appreciative of the efforts of the volunteers, folks in the community who turn out consistently to support these efforts.
I sent my email last night at like 10:30 saying yes to the yard sign, and it was already there today.
Yeah.
So,
Beth Havel
Beth
has
Havel's on
been
it.
fantastic. She really does a nice job.
Yeah.
The mailer will also drop today, so residents will be getting information about the levy and some of the detail around the request for renewal, which will not increase taxes, but, you know, maintain the physical assets of the school district.
Great.
I have a couple of updates from CTEC. The Central Ohio Columbus Business First organization recently ranked CTEC as the second in Central Ohio in terms of adult education programs, just behind Columbus State Community College. So that was quite an honor. CTEC is going to be working with some other career centers on a straight A grant to increase manufacturing education, with the funds going towards equipment and training. So that will be another project that we're undergoing. And we have a student at the state level science fair. She's a medical assisting student from Licking Valley, and she will be competing at the state level. So that's kind of exciting. And then one other thing from CTEC, which I also think is exciting, is that we are partnering with Licking County Health Department to increase the membership in the Medical Reserve Corps, trying to get volunteers to become a part of the Reserve Corps, which is an organization for people with a variety of backgrounds and experiences to help provide emergency, not just care, but services during times of crises. And so they're partnering with CTEC students and some of the medical-related programs. But I'm thinking that I might be talking with Joyce about whether or not we can get our students involved in that as well. And if you become a member, you get free training with this organization. So it's with the Licking County Health Department. In terms of legislative update, there's two things that we're kind of looking at the moment. One is changes to OTES. Right now, the Senate bill, it's Senate Bill 229 with a House bill passing a revised version of it, but they seem to be very far apart. The Senate version was to give us more flexibility in how we use the Ohio teacher evaluation system. But given that the House bill is so far apart, it's not likely that we're going to see anything this year on that. The second piece of legislation that we're looking at is House Bill 487 and the College Credit Plus program. And I'm going to let Jeff talk about that.
So last year, the chancellor was required to submit a plan to look at college dual enrollment and access to college, and submit that plan to the governor's office, I think by December 31st. He did that. They've included the provisions of what's now being called College Credit Plus into the mid-biennium review, which is the budget bill, and to do corrections, which, you know, they've signaled that they're going to break out into multiple bills at this point. The notion behind College Credit Plus is really replacing some of the dual credit post-secondary educational options with a more streamlined process. What we're advocating for as far as a change to that legislation is that the financial implications be means tested. So if you have the means to pay for the college credit, much like we means test a lot of other things within the public education sector, that parents would have to show that they have a need before that college credit would be the burden of the local tax base, which I think if you look at how many students we have that participate in dual enrollment, post-secondary options, it can escalate costs relatively quickly if we don't have some types of means test available. So that's what we're advocating for through
are through OSBA, through BASA, through the Alliance, members that we are aligned with. And you had mentioned OTES. I agree. The Senate version, the House bill version are miles apart, and I don't anticipate that that will be changed with enough time to make an impact for next year. There is current board policy that if a teacher is rated as accomplished, we have given the latitude to evaluate them every other year with a provision of something that they have to accomplish within that off year. So we're just kind of looking at those conversations and seeing how they're playing out. The only other thing that I would mention is that Granville did submit 2 straight A fund proposals. One was a collaborative with Denison University, the practicum class, Abram Kaplan's class that looked at some efficiency, ways to be more efficient through solar and LED lighting with a science connection. And then the other grant is related to a one-to-one initiative. We submitted the grant last year, got feedback. We made it pretty far into the process, got feedback, and we've made modifications to that language, and we've resubmitted it. We're hoping that that would give us the ability to move to a one-to-one initiative, 7 through 12, with refurbished computers and a cycle there that would kickstart our cycle. So we will wait to hear on those, but we continue to look for grant opportunities. Just a reminder that the individual grant award threshold was moved from $5 million to $1 million, so we had to redo our cost proposals. But I think both of those grants have merit.
Okay, the action agenda.
Okay. Action 9.01 is our appointment of the Planning Commission ex officio member, and our representative will be Craig Haraki. I apologize for mispronouncing his name, but he is our ex officio member of the Village Planning Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Mike?
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Janice,
Aye.
Ms. Deeds,
Aye.
Dr. Rentel,
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Thank you. As mentioned previously, 9.02 are the handbooks for next school year with minimal changes except for the annual updates.
So moved.
Okay.
Any questions? Please take the roll.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Dr. Rentel,
Aye.
Mr. Janice,
Aye.
Ms. Deeds, Dr. Corman.
Aye.
9.03 is the board policy adoption that Ms. Heidelberg went through. I don't think I need to speak any more to those.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? No more? Okay. Mike?
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Janice,
Aye.
Ms. Deeds,
Aye.
Dr. Rentel,
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Okay, that moves us into our consent agenda, which has, I'll ask, well, get a motion and then I'll elaborate on it.
So moved.
Okay, it has the typical items, adoption of minutes, acceptance of cash donations. I will call your attention to the many donations related to our spring break trip that Mr. Durst hosts with students that go and do service learning projects. This year was in Oklahoma. We have a donation to the archery club at GIS, and a donation to the Mr. Barclay's fund, and 2 kilns that were donated to the high school.
What
So
is the
that's fantastic.
What's the Barclay Fund support?
That was a community member who passed away, and he set up the fund for athletics and extracurriculars.
Great.
So people, instead of sending flowers, are
Yeah.
sending donations.
Fantastic.
I would call your attention to the employment of certified staff. We hired a new English teacher at the high school to replace a retiring teacher and a high school teacher to replace an earlier resignation. Within, let's see, we also have resignations of Stephanie Longo, who is actually here tonight for the competition cheer, and then a bus driver and an intervention specialist. And then with appreciation of service, we have the retirements of Rita Baldwin, high school Spanish teacher, and Polly Schneider, part-time kindergarten teacher. So obviously, both of those individuals have been in the school district for a very long time. So much appreciation of their service.
Any other comments or questions? Take a vote, please.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Dr. Rantel, Ms. Deeds,
Aye.
Mr. Janice,
Aye.
Dr. Cornman.
Aye.
Moves us into the financial section of the meeting.
The only financial issue today is the monthly budget report, monthly budget highlights. If we get a motion and second, I'll go ahead and.
So moved.
Okay, yeah, it looks like the highlights and summary are longer than the rest of the report. There's a lot of highlights, but most of them are good, most of them. I started on the spending side because it really doesn't say much. Spending continues to stay on track. We're running still slightly below estimates on our spending for the year. Nothing unusual looking on the horizon. We have 4 revenue issues, 3 positive, 1 neutral, I guess. Property tax is in. Revenues are about $200,000 above where we were anticipating. This is all in delinquency payments. Our delinquency payments were up sharply again from last year, and as they were back in August. In August, most of that was commercial. This time was actually mostly residential. There were a handful of properties that actually not even didn't sell, but where there was multi-years of back taxes paid on them. For whatever reason, they had become delinquent. And so we have the $200,000. In addition, everything else is pretty much where it was expected to be. The TIF payment from the township was about $64,000 higher than I was expecting it to be. This is not really new money. It was more a miscommunication than anything. If you recall, we had $1 million increase on our commercial abstracts. It was due to Middleton. As it turns out, that should not have gone there. It was not an increase in taxable value. It was actually an increase into the TIF of some property that was completed that was supposed to be part of the TIF. So we received that as TIF money, not as property. They didn't charge the property tax twice, which I was actually a little concerned about for a little bit. It actually was not on the tax rolls. It was just in what was reported to us from the county. So that was $142,000. I'd been expecting about $98,000. We should get another roughly $142,000 from the TIF payment in August, and that will be the final TIF payment. The township and Kendall, all the bonds were paid off with the payment that just came in, but you can't end a TIF in the middle of a year. So the TIF payments will continue. They will just be treated, at least ours will come just like they have in the past. And then the TIF will be done, and this property will become taxable for tax payments that will be made next year. And will actually go onto the rolls. The third item, and this is something, we talked about this back in the fall, that the state was saying there would be a recalculation of 2013. And first it was going to be in November, December, and it never happened. Then it was January, it never happened. And I finally sort of gave up on it ever happening. And then in the second payment in March, it did happen. The recalculation actually sent us $68,000 of additional revenue that came in from last year that also increased our base for this year's payment, which means we'll getting additional money this year as well because of the higher base and the higher cap. So that's a good thing. It also increases the base for next year. And so, yeah, payments will be a little bit higher next year as well. The final issue, when the settlement from the property tax came, I was a little surprised when I saw there was only $1,600 on there from the special assessment from the New York Granville Community Authority. I had discussions with the county auditor, and it was discovered that they did not charge the fee on the first half property tax bills. They were supposed to have charged the fee, and for whatever reason did not. What the resolution to that is, it will be on the second half bills the full year. That actually won't cause as much disruption as you might think, because for anybody who is escrowing their taxes, they will see no impact of that. The money has been withheld out of the part into the escrow. It just wasn't billed. The only people who will notice it are people who pay their property taxes directly, and their bill will be it'll probably be roughly $400 higher than the first half was, because it was supposed to be $200 each half. It would have caused a problem for us with our cash flow, because a big chunk of this money is stuff that gets used in the summer. We spend a lot of our money for, especially the computer part of it. Rob's doing a lot of stuff over the summer, and so that was going to cause an issue. So the auditors did advance us $80,000, which is roughly what we would have gotten had they charged the fee, and then it'll get settled in the second half to what it should actually be. So in the end, the final result is basically no harm, no foul. It's just not the way it's supposed to happen. And that's the only two big expenditure items that'll look out of line on the monthly reports. One is the other payments, and that's because our fees on property tax collections were a lot higher than we had anticipated. A lot of that is because of the additional delinquency collections. The county keeps 5% in what are called DRETAC fees, and so since they were up so sharply, they can't get more money out of that for their collection fees. And the only other is the repayment to the bond fund that we had been anticipating. I had actually anticipated doing that in May, but we ended up doing it in March. So it's going to show up. There's a big negative, overage in March. It'll balance out in May from when we had originally anticipated making the payment. Moving back on if you go to page 3, we're just going to highlight a couple of things. This shows what has happened with delinquencies, the chart at the top over the last 4 years, and you'll see where the last two payments have been compared to what's happened the 3 prior years. You have to go back to the first half of 2010 to see the levels of delinquency payments that we have right now. Is yours missing, Russ?
No, it's in this one, it wasn't in the one I printed out.
Oh, okay. So again, you see where the delinquencies are and how much higher they were than last year and the year before that. The bottom chart is the cash flow graph, and again, you can see over the next 2 years the effect our improving balance from the passage of the new levy and some of the other positives that we've had on the revenue side. If we take a look at the last two, these are similar to the graphs I showed last month, but these are total year-to-date total revenues and total expenditures. And it shows for each of the revenue source kind of at what percentage we are of what we're going to collect for the year. Obviously the property taxes are 100% in at this point. The two big things that we still have to get, we have not gotten our state reimbursements for the first half for the rollbacks. Those should be coming probably anytime from now into early May. We should be getting those. And And of course, state aid, you would expect, we're 9 months into the year, we should be about 75% of the way through, and you can see from the graph that we're right around 75%. On the expenditure side, again, the key thing to look at is we're 75% through the year. In most of the spending line items, we should be somewhere right around that 75% mark, and you'll see we are generally sitting right at or slightly under the 75% mark through the year. Again, that's a good thing, showing that our spending is on track with where we were expecting it to be. Questions? Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Dr. Rentel, Mr. Janice, Ms. Deeds, Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, we do it this, I knew we had this on there. I don't know, sorry, we have a second resolution. I knew this was on here, but I thought it was supposed to be in the main part. This is just the approval of the web-based update service agreement with OSBA that we do annually. A lot of this leads to what's the policy stuff that we saw from Kathy earlier. This is just where we house it in their system, and this is just to approve the service agreement with OSBA for 1 year, starting on July 1st.
So moved?
Second.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds. Dr. Rentel. Dr. Corman.
Aye. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to consider negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Second.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds. Dr. Rentel.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
There will be no action taken after the executive session.
Good.